For more on how Russia's fighting the COVID-19 pandemic, I'm joined by Yuval Weber. He's a research assistant professor at Texas A&M's Bush School of Government and Public Service in Washington, D.C. Yuval, thanks so much for joining us. Russia had one of the first vaccines available and one of the first strict lockdowns in early 2020. So how did things get so bad there?
Well, like many countries of the world or many governments of the world, they had a very bad public messaging strategy. So at the very beginning of the coronavirus pandemic, the Russian government was trying to get its vaccine to be first on market. So at the same time that they're pushing out their own, one of the things that they didn't do was release the trials data. So they didn't create a lot of trust in their own vaccine at that time. They're also casting doubt on Western ones, such as Moderna, Pfizer, etc. And so what that happened over the long term is people were unsure about what was the efficacy of the local Sputnik vaccine versus others. And then, owing to a long history of people in Russia not trusting their government, not trusting their own technology, they thought, well, if the Western vaccines aren't very good, then our Russian ones must be worse than that. So therefore, how bad can this be? The vaccine may not be all that effective. And then all the various sources of misinformation, vaccine hesitancy, and various sorts of doubt. And what you get across a society is people not taking COVID seriously, not taking vaccines seriously, and then just hoping things just go away on their own. And that's how we got, roughly speaking, into this situation.
Yeah, I want to get into vaccine hesitancy in just a bit there, but officials have decided that this paid holiday is necessary, but there's obviously an economic cost to that. I imagine this isn't really a sustainable approach for Russia.
So sure, so the Russian authorities are coming around to the idea, and they have at certain times before had this idea of lockdowns, these paid working holidays, obliging, restaurants and bars to have QR codes that show vaccine to get in. But all of these things, like across the world, are fairly unpopular. And the Russian government has been very sensitive to this idea of making people's lives, more difficult. And in fact, during the first time that they had a lockdown, they actually suspended the lockdown so that they could allow people to vote in the last elections, both for the parliament and for a referendum. So at that point, people aren't taken very seriously. And similarly, of course, President Putin doesn't want to say, unpopular things. And so the effect is just, if you can imagine, your boss gives you a 1 week free holiday, and you're not really that concerned about COVID, you're going to take this opportunity, as tens of thousands of Russians have, to just go on vacation, visit their friends, visit their family. And that has contributed to this idea that even though it's serious, it may be happening to somebody else. And that's where, in essence, the vaccine figures, the vaccination figures in Russia haven't really gone past 1/3, as your reporter had mentioned in the previous segment.
Yeah, and half the rate in some other countries like Canada. I want to talk about vaccine hesitancy. Russia's been accused of using social media to undermine vaccines in the West. And at the same time, some within Russia are suspicious of government in general, dating back to the Soviet days. What is the Kremlin doing to help overcome that, given that it needs to?
Well, at this point, the imposition of vaccine and mask mandates across the entire country. And sort of slowly but surely, this strategy, as belated as it is to oblige public sector workers, doctors, nurses, transportation workers, people like that, to get vaccinated. But as we were discussing earlier, there's any sort of, just pure hardcore anti-vax sentiment, the same as it is in, many Western countries. There's people who are unsure about the Russian vaccine, and foreign vaccines are not generally available within Russia. And then there's also the desire just to, like a lot of people, to just hope this thing goes away on its own, to think, I'm young and healthy, I have a healthy immune system, I don't really need this. And so you have different sorts of opposition, fear, hesitancy, all coming together, that in the latest public opinion polling by Levada, an independent pollster in Russia, there's fully 45% of the country said they were not willing to get a vaccine. 33% said they had gotten it, and the rest basically are saying they were willing to get it. So at that point, if it's less than half the country or roughly half the country, they'll get it. Russia will be in these cycles of COVID, for, I don't know how long, not a public health expert, but it seems for quite a long time.
And how has the economy fared through all this?
Well, the economy has been, there are a lot of things going on in the Russian economy. Part of that is, natural gas prices are doing well, so that's a really big driver. But what we can see is in terms of small to medium-sized business, and particularly in the retail sector, it's just been essentially fairly volatile because you do have, these lockdowns, which essentially slow down economic activity, and because even though there is these working holidays for people, in private businesses or working for the state, that doesn't extend to self-employed people. So business owners, bars, restaurants, theaters, things of that nature, they're the ones who are, getting hurt by this, and they're the ones who are organizing opposition to the government on this very idea of a paid holiday.
Very interesting. Yuval Weber from Texas A&M Bush School of Government. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.